Thank you for that. Yeah, I'm afraid my technician, where's my technician? Oh, Tony's here. So normally I don't use PowerPoint, so we'll see how it all goes. But I thought, obviously I've been involved in Flight Centre for some time, but Jude, my wife, who's here, who's really the boss of Spices. If you want to grab her, if you want to find out the true facts about Spices, I think she's here most of the day. I've got to go. Basically, we both grew up in southeast Queensland. Myself on Apple Orchard near Stanthorpe on the Texas Road, and Jude was mainly in Warwick. So we know that area pretty well, and I don't know how many of you know southeast Queensland, but it's not well known as an ecotourism destination. I did vet science at UQ and went overseas, found Top Deck and then Flight Centre in 1981. We did an IPO, floated in 1995. And now currently we're in about 14 countries that we own our operations. We have about 18 billion in sales and make about 400 million, just under 400 million in profit before tax. As different from a lot of the businesses Paul was talking about, you know, we obviously use technology a lot. We have quite a few online offerings, but we're still largely a bricks and mortar travel group. But this is not about Top Deck, it's about Spices, and I'll give you a little bit of the story later. I think what happened to start the Spices retreats off was we were looking for land in the scenic rim just to sort of build a weekender, I think, Jude, wasn't it? Anyway, we looked at quite a few places, and those of you who know southeast Queensland, there's what they call the scenic rim, and it runs basically from Tweed Heads area, Point Danger and that, probably about nearly 350 kilometres, Tony, around to either Laidley, One Spur, or areas like Toowoomba. It's part of the Great Dividing Range, of course, but it's a very distinctive area, largely undeveloped through most of it, luckily. I was away in New Zealand, and Jude bought a place eventually. I think we had 1,500 acres, which was just near Spices Peak, right next to Main Range National Park. We later extended that. We bought the property next door, and also Hiddenbar, which is at Grantchester, which is about an hour west of Brisbane, and they have about 8,000 acres and 12,000 acres respectively. Also in the Mountain Estate National Park area, which is quite close by, I think we have about another 1,500 acres. And it was, should we go on another slide, Tony? So this got us involved a bit in not only farming, because these were cattle properties, but working out how cattle could work in with ecotourism, if you like. A lot of this country, as you can imagine, is fairly mountainous. They nearly all border onto national parks, and so consequently there are some creek flats, black soil flats, which are quite good for grazing and cropping, but most of the country, it's more about weed management and managing the ecosystem. One of the things that also motivate us is that we are quite concerned about some of the problems that civilization causes. And in Australia, it's absolutely classic. You know, we have a huge population growth in Australia. It's I think about 400,000 people a year extra. So a city the size of Canberra is coming in every year. And of course, where do most of those people go? Most of those people go into our urbanisation. And South East Queensland's a classic case where there's just this huge spread of urbanisation that's destroying a lot of our wildlife, a lot of our native forests in and around cities. So people don't have any opportunity now, close to cities, generally, to see native animals and native flora and fauna, and the habitats that go with them. And this was, and you may well know that Australia has the worst rate of mammalian extinctions over the last 200 years. About 40% of the world's mammal extinctions have occurred in Australia over the last couple hundred years. Probably partly because a lot of places in Europe had made most of their animals extinct long ago. But you know, it is a major problem in Australia. The population explosion just can't go on if we want to preserve some of our habitat. So what about the Spices story? We bought, I tell you, we bought these properties. Hidden Vale, the place, the 12,000 acre place just west of Brisbane, has about, it has a retreat on it. It's called Spices Hidden Vale. And we decided that it's one of those properties where we run cattle. Cattle are a reasonably important part of it. It's a sort of property that's, from a cattle point of view, that was quite degraded about the turn of the century, turn of the 19th, 20th century. A lot of the land had been cleared except for the ranges, and so the rehabilitation of a property like that is to make it more better for wildlife, better for birds and mammals, as well as reptiles, and is quite difficult. And it's probably a 20-year project which we started probably 6 or 8, 9 years ago. But both these properties, or the 3 areas of properties, we've got Mountain Estate, Hidden Vale on the Little Liverpool Range, and Spices Peak on the main range, are all in the scenic rim. And one of the more innovative things that we've tried to do, we're in the process of doing now, and Tony Charles is helping us, is getting a walk that goes initially about 50 or 60 kilometres from Spices Peak Station or Spices Peak Lodge through to Hidden Mountain Estate, where we have a retreat, and also to Hidden Vale. Now, that's the first stage of it. Do we have that slide, Tony? Yeah, this is basically the overall proposal. Now, this is what we're working with the Queensland Government, and very effectively. The Queensland Government is very supportive of this. It is the walk eventually, you may be able to see, the first part of the walk will be the northern section. That's as I said, about 50k of walking track to be built with about, I think 3 intermediate lodges or eco camps. But the western section and the southern section, they'll be some distance away. And one of the things I'd be interested to quote is there was a very well-known politician in Queensland called Arthur Groom. Actually, when I went to boarding school in Toowoomba, I was in Groom House. So he, in 1941, and this is a quote from him, I propose that along the scenic rim of mountains, central lodges, spaced perhaps from 15 to 20 miles apart, should be built into natural backgrounds and connected within the greater national park by walking paths only. Between the main lodges, overnight rustic cabins will provide shelter for those walking alone by a key self-service system or for organised parties in the care of a range of naturalists. So someone had a vision some 80 years ago to, is that 80 years? Probably 80 years, yeah, more than 80 years ago, to build this iconic walk. And this is one of the things that we, Jude and I, are really keen to make happen. I believe, and we're pretty confident with the help of the Queensland Parks and Wildlife Service, that the first 40-50k walk, well, it's really the second one, will be actually operating by the end of next calendar year. The total distance, as I said, is 350k or so. Just building the tracks will probably cost about 10 million, and the accommodation probably something in excess of $100 million. So but that will be probably over the next 10, even 10 to 12 years. We already do walks. We have walks on our properties in the Main Range National Park, leading from Spices Peak and Spices Canopy, which is a luxury camping site below Spices Peak, and they're incredibly popular. They don't run over the summer months, like from now till the end of February because of the flies. No, it's because it's too hot there apparently. But already our March, April walks are already full, and we just know that these walks will be a fantastic success. For those of you who know this area, it is not frequented a lot. It's only an hour's drive from Brisbane. For example, the Cunningham's Gap, which is right in the centre of the scenic rim, to the southwest. But we believe this will probably become one of Australia's most iconic walks in that sort of country, and certainly will rival some of the other walks in Tasmania and New Zealand just for the very Australian look and feel of the country. It's an amazing country, and one hopes that those of you who live in the Brisbane area go and have a look at it sometime, because we want to make it a little bit more accessible. At the moment, it is less accepted, it is less frequented than it probably was 30, 40 years ago. Bushwalking, particularly in these remote areas, even though close to Brisbane, has become probably less popular. People are, I think people have got a bit soft over the last 50 years. So some of the other things we're doing in this ecotourism, a lot of it, it's not only about in our properties and the national parks, rehabilitating some of the countryside, getting rid of some of the weed and some of the feral animals, of course, or certainly controlling them. But it's also breeding and releasing wildlife that are endangered. Just in this region around Hiddenvale, for example, the koala, the brush-tailed rock wallaby, the spotted-tailed quoll, and the square-tailed kite are all endangered. And there is absolutely no doubt, unless things are done, particularly in this region, that they will become extinct in the next 100 years or so. So the time is of the essence. It's very important for us to make this happen. We're currently working with the University of Queensland to build a significant wildlife breeding station in conjunction with DQ. We're quite close, only about 20 minutes away from their Gatton campus. And that will happen over the next, it'll be finished probably in the next 18 months. So, actually I think we've got a little movie too I'd like to show you, just to give you a little bit of a feeling about the countryside that I'm talking about around the Cunningham's Gap area. So that gives you a bit of an idea about what the Scenic Rim Trail already does, but when it's extended, it will be one of the most fantastic walks in the country. So just in conclusion, I believe urbanisation is really playing havoc in Australia, particularly around our cities with wildlife, and I think ecotourism projects such as this are going to be absolutely essential. It's going to be essential that the private sector funds it. Governments just don't have the money to do a lot of this stuff. And in the end, the investment will give us a huge return, I believe, because Australia, particularly South East Queensland, needs to be known for iconic walks and activities and experiences, so that we do attract not just local tourists, but a lot of people from overseas. Thank you very much.